TV Extra presents. Stay tuned for more exciting content. Regarding why El Toro, we believe that there are many possible reasons for this phenomenon, but we can only make speculative assumptions for now. Some believe that this place is the ancient mythological homeland of the Mexica, Aztlan, where Paleocontact occurred. It is known that the Aztec legend, as outlined in the famous 16th century Batarini Codex, describes Aztlan as a small island on a lake, populated by herons, located somewhere north of Mexico. Indeed, El Toro Hill was once surrounded by water, and many old submerged caves have been found within it. It is also located on the migration line of the Zapi. The tribes of the Mexica who lived here, according to archaeological data, left this area due to drought around the 13th century and headed southwest towards the place where the Mexican capital is now located, which also coincides with the legend. This version was proposed by the already mentioned artifact researcher of Paleocontact, Dr. Pablo Sanchez. But there are, as is known, different versions regarding the location of Aztlan, including the one that it is simply a myth. Another ufological version about Erator Hill suggests that there was, and possibly still is, an underground alien base here, as this location was energetically and geographically preferable for them, and they accordingly contacted the local tribes, which led to the appearance of artifacts there. The frequent sightings of UFOs and aliens in place support this version. There are some additional photographs. Local witnesses also told us about this. From two witnesses independently, we have information about the existence of a deep cave at El Toro, where the bodies of aliens are allegedly located. We were also told stories about discoveries of unusual elongated skulls in burials on the hill. The third version suggests that this hill, as a remote and hard-to-reach place, was chosen in ancient times by certain guardians specifically to hide artifacts of the contact field, due to some ecological or political reasons. Later, when this territory was settled by tribes, they accidentally discovered some caves containing hidden artifacts and used them in their ritual practices as sacred objects. When the inhabitants of this area were forced to leave due to a devastating drought, they left behind sacred objects, or rather, they were ritually buried on Retoro Hill, where they were originally found. Which of these and other possible versions is true, we do not know. Perhaps this mystery will be revealed in the future regarding similar places. If we consider the area as a burial site for artifacts, then, as is known, there are other legendary places. For example, the Taos Caves in Ecuador. This place is guarded by a local tribe, and repeated attempts to re-enter it have so far been unsuccessful. There is a legendary underground chamber beneath the pore of the Sphinx. Despite instrumental scanning showing the presence of a cavity in this location, excavations by official authorities are prohibited. There are reports of similar caves in Peru and Tibet. In this aspect, one can also consider the recent underground finds in Central Europe, in Eastern Austria, where the burials clearly exhibit characteristics of time capsules. It is clear that there are other places where the ancients left us their messages in the form of unusual artifacts. When talking about places where similar contact artifacts have been found, a lot of reports come from various states in Mexico, but it is difficult to say how much trust can be placed in these findings. Similar individual artifacts, as we know, have also been found on the Nazca Plateau in Peru, in northern regions of China, in western Turkey, and in northern Africa. But again, we face the main problem here, just like with the artifacts of El Toro. It is their identification. First of all, I must say that the overwhelming majority of items that are presented as Mexican artifacts of the contact field, in my deep conviction, are indeed fakes. Specifically, the modern works of local craftsmen. Moreover, their quantity is so vast, and the activity of merchants dealing in these goods is so vigorous, that the relatively small portion of items which we believe to be authentic is overshadowed by this abundance, creating a negative backdrop for the perception of this phenomenon for many researchers, including ufologists, as well as those who are simply interested in this topic. Therefore, in our book, we dedicated an entire chapter to the analysis of such forgeries. As for the critics, who dismiss even the possibility of the existence of a polycontact artifact from the outset, the main leitmotif of such objections is that it cannot be, due to the fact that this can simply never be, or it is absolutely too good to be true. Undoubtedly, the criticism is specifically based on three main and primarily key points. The first, the iconography of images, visual devices, types of aliens, and plot lines are borrowed from samples created by contemporary pop culture about aliens. First and foremost, Hollywood films. Furthermore, there is a lack of connection with the known cultures of ancient America. Neither the Olmecs, nor the Maya, nor the Mexica, nor others have anything similar. Finally, such artifacts are unknown in the monuments of ancient cultures. It must be said that at first glance, these arguments seem convincing. However, let's look at them from another perspective. Hollywood images and plots. Where did they come from? Were they not inspired by the accounts of thousands and thousands of witnesses about contacts with aliens, about videos and photos taken? So why should these images differ exactly from those who visited us thousands of years ago? Moreover, the concept of time and space in alien civilizations may differ significantly from our own understanding. Let me remind you of the words of Albert Einstein. People like us who believe in physics know that the distinction between the past, present, and future is only a stubborn, persistent illusion. Furthermore, how accurate are the comparisons of the artifacts with items from well-known ancient American cultures? Our research shows that based on the temporal horizon, the artifacts from the contact field date back to more ancient periods, possibly to the time of the megalithic civilization. On the other hand, we know that some American cultures refer to themselves as descendants of aliens from the stars. And finally, in the well-known, especially Mesoamerican cultures, we see the same archetypal zoomorphic images as those found on the artifacts: snake, lizard, frog, jaguar, owl, eagle, geometric shapes, circle, spiral, triangle. It should not be excluded that all these and other ancient images could indeed have been incorporated and transformed in accordance with specific local cultural conditions and religious beliefs. As for the claim that such items are absent from archaeological finds, this cannot be fully agreed upon either. We know many examples of ancient depictions that resemble flying machines and images of aliens in rock art from nearly all continents, ancient Eastern manuscripts, illustrations in medieval pictures, and so on. And this is despite the fact that the Church has constantly made enormous efforts to eliminate any traces of polycontact. It is also important not to overestimate the volume and representativeness of archaeological finds. For example, in Mexico, archaeologists have only been able to explore no more than 10% of what has been discovered, and modern LiDAR or laser surveys indicate thousands and thousands of new sites. Today, we indeed actually present three main groups of such evidence. Firstly, there are confirmed facts regarding the discoveries of artifacts, including those made by participants of various international expeditions. In our book, we describe in great detail 14 selected and fascinating different stories of such discoveries. As an example, I will only provide a reference to one such story. Its main participant is investigative journalist Thomas Ricker from Switzerland. In 2022, his book, In the Footsteps of the Gods in Mexico, was published in Germany. which is entirely dedicated to describing his expedition and findings. Starting in May 2019, with the aim of studying the phenomenon of the Obzona il Toro artifact, he undertook 6 rather lengthy expeditions in Mexico. During the expeditions, he not only studied local artifacts in a private collection, but also made 10 trips to the Retoro sites of artifact discoveries. In total, he managed to find about 40 artifacts during the excavations. It is worth mentioning that in our 2 expeditions, we were able to find approximately 50 stone and ceramic artifacts, mostly small figurines. It is important to emphasize that some of the findings described in our book were made without the involvement of local guides, who usually accompany such groups. In addition, the sites of the discoveries were preliminarily examined for possible fraud, which could be inferred from the traces of intentional recent burials. Secondly, data from various scientific laboratory tests to determine the approximate age of the findings. Tests were conducted by various researchers and in different laboratories. We know of at least approximately 20 such tests, most of which were conducted with the participation of our group in total. At the same time, we assumed a priori that the organic material used for the radiocarbon test could potentially have been specified in some way, or due to unaccounted factors, could yield false results. Therefore, it was important to conduct tests on alternative products made from different materials. The material turned out to be ceramics, as it would allow for a different type of thermoluminescence test, which would provide the age of the items firing. In this sense, the most informative, valuable, and reliable for us was the test conducted at our request by a German laboratory on 3 ceramic artifacts that we personally found during the expedition. The results showed the age of the ceramics to be between 2,500 to 3,000 years. As a curiosity, it is worth noting that when our information about the findings was considered in an article published in a respected ufological journal, curated by the well-known Eric Bennikin, the author could not find a better argument to prove the impossibility of the existence of El Toro artifacts than to unfoundedly accuse us of fabricating the ceramic samples sent to the laboratory. Third, the results of chemical, physical, and organoleptic analyses showed that these artifacts had been buried in the ground for a long time. I will provide an example of one such piece of evidence. According to the ritual of burying artifacts, during the exodus due to the catastrophic drought of local tribes in the territory of El Toro, fragments of household ceramics were placed in pits along with the artifact. Well, this is generally a well-known tradition of worshipping the gods of the underworld. Therefore, when you come across such fragments during excavations, it is a sign that there may be an artifact nearby. So, in one of the excavations where we found an artifact, we took a fragment and sent it to the laboratory for age assessment. The results showed that the age of this fragment of household pottery was 900 years, plus or minus 15%, which exactly coincides with the date established by archaeologists for these areas, corresponding to the 13th and 13th centuries of our era. The analysis of surface deposits on the artifacts revealed calcite growths, the formation of manganese dioxide, remnants of insect and mollusk activity, as well as traces of prolonged burial of objects in the ground. The analysis of the raw materials, firing methods, and processing of ceramic artifacts also indicates ancient technology. Additionally, an analysis of patina, carving methods, and processes of physical and chemical weathering can be included. In summary of the brief overview of the evidence we have gathered, it should be noted that, unfortunately, our resources were quite limited. Everything was done solely out of enthusiasm, initiative, personal resources, and experience. Therefore, there are still many opportunities ahead for other researchers that were unavailable to us. It is fundamentally important to do this objectively, independently, without being guided by dogmas and external pressure. In addition to the methods of analysis I have already mentioned, We also used so-called unconventional approaches to study the artifacts, where consciousness serves as a primary and essential research tool in the field of and understanding. These methods are not recognized by the overwhelming majority of the scientific community. As in the modern scientific paradigm, consciousness is viewed as a subjective category that opposes objective matter. These methods include in particular biolocation, Kozyrev mirrors, text sensory perception, channeling, regression, fixation, auras, and a number of others. Speaking about our experience in applying neutralization methods, 2 points should be noted. First, the reason for their application. The fact is that standard scientific methods have only allowed us to obtain a preliminary answer to one important question. Are the historical artifacts in question, in fact, a field of modern forgery, or are they ancient objects? All other questions are undoubtedly beyond the capabilities of modern science. Secondly, our use of unconventional methods was experimental and pilot in nature. It can be said that we have only touched upon this delicate and subtle issue. However, without going into the details that you can read about in our book, we have, so to speak, important information that we believe should be further explored and additional insights. Specifically, all the unconventional methods we used, such as biolocation, Kozyrev mirrors, channeling, and extrasensory perception, have shown that the artifacts of the field contact contain some aspect that is hidden from direct physical observation. In our opinion, this aspect is the stable fluctuation of the information field created by external conscious influence. However, for example, numerous experiments with biolocation show that frames and pendulums in the hands of various operators actively respond to artifacts. Moreover, these tools in the hands of an experienced operator are an important part of the methodology for locating burial sites at El Toro. In the extrasensory experiments, all participants confirmed the presence of an induced field, the source of which is likely an extraterrestrial consciousness. In the unique experiments of Taisia Kuznetsova with virtual matrices of consciousness, participants connected to the artifact's field remotely through an image, resulting in the acquisition of visual and other information. Therefore, we believe that unconventional methods have every chance of becoming an important research tool, especially where traditional science is powerless. In our research, considering the age of the artifacts and a number of other considerations, we have put forward the hypothesis that they may be connected to what we call a megalithic civilization. That is, a civilization that has reached us in the form of individual megalithic structures scattered around the world, testifying to the use of advanced technologies and cutting-edge scientific knowledge. Our attempt at comparative analysis provided some food for thought on this. The first thing that caught our attention was the presence of artifacts and drawings on them depicting megalithic structures, primarily pyramids, both flat-topped and stepped. In some engraved drawings, the image of pyramids coexists with the depiction of flying vehicles. Furthermore, the artifacts feature images of various massive platforms, which may also be associated with megalithic structures, images of people with elongated heads. Such images can be found on monuments from the Neolithic era, as well as in early American cultures, for example, among the Albegos. On the artifacts from El Toro, long-headed characters are also among the central figures. There is another area of intersection, the system of symbols and symbolic representations. One of the most important sacred symbols dating back to ancient times is the image of the third eye. This symbol appears in various forms across all known civilizations. On the artifacts of El Toro, this symbol is also represented very widely. The overall symbolism is also manifested in the depiction of sacred animals, primarily the serpent. Snakes are quite commonly found on the megalithic monuments in Cusco. The same is true for the artifacts. On the megaliths, one can find images of panthers or cougars that are very similar to those present on the artifacts of El Toro. Common symbols also include images of lizards. Various sacred sources indicate that the megalithic civilization used technologies based on crystals and other advanced technologies. The drawings of individual artifacts from the culture depict scenes that can be interpreted as the transmission of technologies related to crystals. These and other parallels of comparison, in our opinion, may not be coincidental and testify to the connection between the megalithic civilization and extraterrestrial representatives. Among the artifacts in the El Toro area, we came across an interesting item: a stone-carved, elongated head with a protruding jaw and an unusual grimace of teeth. But what was even stranger was indeed the text placed on the back of the head, whose signs closely resembled Phoenician writing. Later, we received a message about another similar artifact containing analogous signs. We turned to an expert in ancient languages of the Caucasus, Kautia Pekitikov, from the Kabardino-Balkar University, for assistance. According to the scholar, this is a variant of mixed Phoenician and Etruscan writing. Both texts are, in essence, a kind of prayers and are related to a god named Anu. The text also mentions a place called Nod, and the Almighty rules in Nod. We know that according to the Old Testament book of Genesis, Nod is a place located east of Eden, where Cain was exiled after killing his brother Abel. How did these artifacts with such inscriptions end up in America? Can vague guesses be made? However, this story has its continuation. Upon examining the artifacts from the El Toro area in various collections, we found several items resembling the artifact described above, but without any inscriptions. All of them shared common features: an elongated skull, a protruding jaw, a specific snarl of teeth, 5 fingers on both hands and feet, and massive limbs. At the same time, aliens are typically depicted in artifacts as having 3 or 4 fingers. This unusual combination of features, along with the aforementioned texts, may indicate that these artifacts characterize a hybrid type of human created as a result of genetic experiments by aliens. At the end of 2021, a book titled The Secret Underground World was published in German in Austria. Its authors are the renowned Austrian archaeologists, Heinrich and Ingrid Kusch. The book tells about the sensual findings made by the authors during the excavation of ancient underground tunnels in one of the Austrian cities. The story there goes like this. Since 2016, a private owner of an ancient underground structure called Mine of the 12 Apostles, located beneath his home in the small town of Klosteny Berg, has been clearing these premises for subsequent economic use from a vast amount of medieval debris. In the process, he has repeatedly stumbled upon strange ancient artifacts of various kinds. Therefore, the owner of the building commissioned the expert, Professor Dr. Heinrich Kusch, and his wife to conduct further excavations so that they would be carried out, studied, documented, and published in a professional and scientifically accurate manner. After clearing many tons of stone debris, archaeologists were able to penetrate the tunnels and reach the remains of an ancient Roman bath. After uncovering tightly laid stone slabs in the semi-antique baths, they discovered a new prehistoric cultural layer located at a depth of approximately 30-40 centimeters. During the excavations, researchers came across several large pits carved into the bedrock. These pits had different geometric configurations. Some of them were strictly oriented to the north. The main discoveries were made in these pits, including stone-engraved plates, ceramic vessels, figurines, stone tools, and metal objects. The ceramic vessels contained powder, paints, stones, and remnants of food and wood. It is important to note that the items in the burials were arranged in complexes in a specific order and were neatly placed against the plane of the pits. There is an impression of a deliberate nature to these deposits as a kind of important messages. The items in the burials were in varying conditions. Some findings were reliably placed in pits in a broken state, while others were reassembled using natural glue before they were buried. It is noted that the quality of the bonding is high, as these bonded items have lasted until now. Various metal objects were discovered during the excavations. The first find was a heavily corroded object of strange shape. Analysis revealed that it was made of an iron alloy and aluminum. Another find resembled a part of a flow turbine, and it was made of copper, zinc, chrome, and nickel. Several pieces of jewelry made of a brass-aluminum alloy were also discovered, with the aluminum content reaching up to 40%. Individual symbols and short sequences of symbols resembling Danube script were found on statues and ceramics during the excavations. 6 stone slabs were also discovered. On one side there are engraved drawings, and on the other texts in an unknown script. According to the analysis, the engraving was made using a very fine high-temperature technical device, as indicated by the fact that the inner part of the engraving area is glazed. The plates feature various images, including pyramids, 3-fingered humanoid beings, disc-shaped flying devices, a lexosa with an elongated skull, and a device resembling a battery with an electric light bulb. One plate contains a very interesting plot. At the top is the aforementioned 3-fingered figure. Below it is an arrow pointing to a hovering flying object. Another arrow leading to several holes connected by lines and pointing upwards towards the flying object. The authors suggested that the last image may represent a constellation. Astronomers to whom they presented this engraving identified the main star in it, the red giant of the Taurus constellation, known as Aldebaran, which is located about 65 light-years from the solar system. The location of Aldebaran on the map is marked with a small circle, presumably intended to indicate the location of the home world of the beings as a marker for the main star. During the excavations, 3 stone vessels were also discovered, which the authors later identified as the oldest battery containers in the world. Upon examining the battery stone vessels, it was found that they were made by machines. Stone processing specialists claim that it is impossible to drill such a large interior in such a thin-walled stone vessel using ordinary hand tools. Lab tests showed the vessels contained potassium, bismuth, lead isotopes, magnet oxide, and magnesium. In the laboratory test, this device produced a constant current with a voltage of 3.5 V. That was approximately 15 times stronger than regular modern batteries. A glass casing measuring 25 centimeters in length and 6 centimeters in diameter was also found, made of thin and very lightweight glass. It is possible to suggest that it was a component of a lamp powered by the specified battery. The findings described in the book have many similarities with the artifacts from the El Toro contact field. It is evident that, above all, these groups of artifacts are connected by a common theme of alien visitation to Earth. They are also united by the fact that the artifacts were buried in underground chambers. An important common feature is the presence of a group of stone slabs with unique engraved designs and texts on both sides. In the 2 groups of artifacts, there is also a noticeable external similarity in the depictions of certain types of aliens and flying vehicles. Another intriguing common theme in the images on the artifacts is cosmic maps. As mentioned earlier, one plate features a drawing that has been identified by astronomy specialists as the constellation Taurus. Similar engraved drawings are also found on artifacts from El Toro. An important common feature of the artifacts from Shaft of the 12 Apostles and El Toro zone is the presence of writing. This is not only about separately engraved signs, but specifically about established writing systems represented by textual writing. The texts are engraved in the form of linear and sequential signs arranged in separate lines. The authors of the book believe that the corridors and halls that have been discovered are entirely within the solid compact rock and were carved from the surrounding stone by some unknown tools over 60,000 years ago. This is confirmed by radiocarbon dating of a rectangular wooden beam found during the excavations, which was vertically inserted into an ancient lintel. In another location, the age of one of the underground tunnels was determined to be 20,000 years. Moreover, this is a highly precise, artificially created rock passage that is 92 kilometers long, which was likely carved into the rock using machinery. The traces of workers on the walls were covered with glaze from the inside. That is, melted quartz stone. The study of the polished surface of the tunnel allowed for the conclusion of high-temperature processing. The question of the age of the discovered artifacts remains open. However, there are approximate values for the horizon of findings based on 20 dating results, verified by various laboratories, which show that the elementary find is partially dated to the Paleolithic era. It is important to emphasize that the findings published in this book were discovered, documented, and recorded in accordance with the scientific criterion NCT, technical expertise and dating, were conducted by renowned scientists from several universities and globally recognized scientific laboratories, and thus are proven facts. In my opinion, knowledge about polycontacts pertains to the most important information related primarily to understanding the meaning of human existence, its place in the universe, and the prospects for future development. And not only human knowledge, but also that of the planet as a whole. It is difficult to find an area of knowledge where this could not be reflected. This is the knowledge we need in preparing humanity for the historical mission of global contact with extraterrestrial intelligence, transitioning to a qualitatively new level of development that allows it to become a conscious part of the cosmic community of brothers in reason. And I think that this is not such a distant task if modern humanity can stop the slide towards a global nuclear catastrophe. Regarding our further research, well, the highest goals should still be based on real possibilities. Our next specific task is related to the idea of recording and measuring anomalous fluctuations in the field of consciousness on artifacts. In search of adequate scientific tools, we turn to a technology tested through years of experiments, developed by the Princeton Laboratory for Engineering Anomalies Research. This laboratory operated in the Austria, USA from 1979 to 2007. Its founder and director was physicist and professor of mechanical and aerospace engineering at Princeton University, Robert Yen. He also led NASA's research program on electric propulsion systems for spacecraft. This laboratory was engaged in studying the anomalous effects of human consciousness on technical devices and processes. A complex was developed consisting of an electronic random event generator and a data processing computer program. With his help, they were able to conduct large-scale and convincing experiments demonstrating that the activity of human consciousness statistically significantly alters the outcomes of the probabilistic process of generating random events. They also conducted field studies with various objects. Well, for example, sacred sites, natural anomalies, and others that have shown that in these special zones, abnormal effects are also recorded, altering the parameters of the device's operation. This technology is named PIR, based on the abbreviation of the laboratory's name. Among the researchers using this technology is Belarusian experimental physicist Viktor Mikhneyevich, who has been studying power spots for many years, including individual natural formations, temples, relics of saints, works of art, and other objects where abnormal fluctuations in the informational field of consciousness may have formed for various reasons. In May, we conducted a pilot experiment in Moscow with a group of artifacts from the El Toro zone. The experiment recorded an anomalous field at 8 out of the 11 measured artifacts. Now we plan to expand this experiment by significantly increasing the number of artifacts and broadening the research program itself, which will allow us to obtain reliable assessments of the sizes of anomalous effects and analyze their individual structural parameters. Thus, new evidence of field contact will emerge, where an alien intelligence has left us its trace, or a message encoded in the informational fields of artifacts. I have already said these methods provide unique information which cannot be obtained in any other way. Here, a well-methodologically supported organization of a series of complementary experiments is important, the results of which can be summarized using the principles of meta-analysis. To do this, first group the obtained data into informational blocks, then structure the information within these blocks using the principle of consistency. Thus, as a result, we can obtain a coherent statistical information core within the framework of the given experiment, which can then be refined and supplemented by the results of other experiments. This specifically relates to the experiments in Coyer's mirrors. As is known, in Coyer's mirrors, due to the effects of shape and possibly other effects, there is modulation of the field of consciousness. Thanks to this, the operator's consciousness can be relatively easily induced into a so-called special state that enhances or activates clairvoyant abilities. When there is a target matrix, such as an artifact or its photograph, the operator's consciousness connects to the informational field of the artifacts, or perhaps the consciousness enters an event environment related to the artifacts, triggering a flow of images, emotions, and other states. Then, the processing of such information obtained in a series of experiments with different participants is carried out in a meta-analysis mode. Thus, we can obtain additional information to form a hypothesis related to the description of events and field contacts. Taking this opportunity, I appeal to those involved in the work with the mirrors of Koyreva, progression, interesting experiences, and extrasensory perception, to voluntarily participate in an extensive and unique experiment using various methods of working with consciousness to create a unified database of information about the artifacts of the contact field in the elite zone. If these experiments are combined with simultaneous measurements of field anomalies, using the technology I have already mentioned, PIR, it could represent a new chapter in ufology and the study of consciousness processes.